Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn the 16th chapter from your Sunday school book, and the name of the chapter is David Becomes King. Now in your previous two chapters, chapter 14 and chapter 15, you might have learnt about how David became the king of Israel from being an ordinary shepherd. He was an ordinary shepherd, but there was something extraordinary about David. What are the hurdles he went through to become the king? Now, in this chapter, we learn more about David, how God trained David even before calling and exalting him. David is one of the most important personalities in world history. Jesus is called the Son of David, so we can see that David was exalted to such a high position. He becomes a favorite of King Saul, and he's a close friend of Saul's son Jonathan. Saul was worried that David is trying to take his throne. That's why Saul became David's enemy. Now, children, I would like you to memorize the verse. The verse which you have to memorize is Psalms 31, verse 1. In thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in thy righteousness. Now, the portion to read is mentioned in your book. Please go through the chapters so that you can get a better understanding about this lesson. Moving ahead, we'll learn about Ishbosheth and David. Now, Ishbosheth was proclaimed king of Israel by Abner, Saul's cousin and commander in chief, who then became the real power behind the throne. The house of Judah, however, followed David, and war broke out between the two kingdoms. Now, Ishbosheth and Abner had a quarrel, and Abner came to make a treaty with David. After some time, Joab kills Abner. He took revenge for killing his brother Asahel. David was very displeased by the action of Joab. Now, Ishbosheth was very unhappy because he was feeling helpless without Abner. He appointed Rechab and Bana as the commanders of the army in the place of Abner. But they did something very bad. They killed Ishbosheth when he was asleep. I'm sure Ishbosheth was very disappointed and sad because of Abner's death. However, this paved the way for David to gain dominion all over Israel. Now, after David becomes the king of Israel, he sought someone from the house of Saul because Jonathan was extremely good to him. He was very good to him. He was his best friend. So David wanted to repay the goodness, the kindness which Jonathan showed to him. So he started searching for someone from Saul's family. And he came to know that the only remaining member of the household of Saul was the 5-year-old son of Jonathan, Mephibosheth. But he was lame on both the feet. Mephibosheth has a wonderful meaning, one who overcomes shame. David brought him to his palace and treated him very kindly and gave him all the inheritance of his grandfather Saul. David also gave him the right to eat from his table. How did Mephibosheth become handicapped? After the death of Saul and Jonathan, Mephibosheth's nurse took him and fled in panic. In her haste, the child fell or was dropped while fleeing. That is how he became handicapped. Now we learn about David and his son Absalom. Absalom was the son of David by Maacah, the daughter of Talmai. Among his David's son, Absalom was the most handsome. His name means father of peace. But Absalom killed his brother Ammon and took revenge for the shame he brought on his sister Tamar. Absalom was very scared of his father, so he fled to his mother's place, and he stayed there for 3 years. But after 3 years, David brought him back to his palace. Absalom was extremely smart. He was very smart. He captivated the hearts of people from the beginning, and he lived in a great style. Absalom stole the hearts of the people of Israel. He went to Hebron and he declared himself a king over there. With the help of Ahithophel, David came to know about this. And David fled from the place. Nevertheless, God was with David. David gathered his army and fought with Absalom's army in the wood of Ephraim. Now Absalom's army was defeated, and he fled on a donkey. David had given clear instructions that nobody would touch his son, and they should deal nicely with his son. Afterwards, when Absalom's army was defeated, Absalom was riding his donkey and he meets some of David's men. While he's trying to escape, his wonderful hair gets caught in a tree branch and he's left hanging by it as the donkey presses on. Absalom knew nobody would kill him because David had told them to be gentle with his son. But Joab arrives and he puts 3 spears in his heart. And they kill Absalom and they cast him in a large pit and lay a large heap of stones over him. When David comes to know about Absalom's death, he was very heartbroken. He says, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you." This shows that David immensely loved his son. Now, when David became old, Adonijah, his son, which he had through Haggith, declared himself king with the support of Joab and the priest Abiathar. Nathan the prophet then spoke to Bathsheba about Solomon's right to the throne. David also confirmed that because he had the desire to make Solomon his successor. David took Solomon to Gishon and anointed him king by the priest Zadok. David died in a very good old age. He reigned over Israel for 40 years and 6 months and 7 years. And 6 months he reigned in Judah. Now we learn about the characteristics of David. There was something wonderful about David. What were they? The first characteristic is that he captured Jerusalem and he made it its capital. Now David was 30 years old when he was anointed king over Israel. After his men came to Jerusalem, he captured the city of Zion from the hands of Jebusites. Then it came to know the city of David. David built a house there and he dwelt over there. The second characteristic is that he brought the Ark of Covenant to Jerusalem. David went with all his people to bring the Ark of God from the house of Obed, Edom, the Gittite. David made the priest carry the Ark according to the law and he brought it to Jerusalem. He sacrificed oxen, sheep, and danced before the Lord all his might. But his wife Michal despised him. But he gave importance to worshipping God than to anything else. The third point is a repenting heart. He made a very bad decision in his life by taking Bathsheba as his wife. But when God confronted David through Nathan, prophet Nathan, he was convicted and he repented. The first child that Bathsheba had died of a disease. Her second son was named Solomon. Solomon means full of peace. Now let's see what are the comparison between David and Jesus. Now David is known as a shepherd and a king. Jesus is also known as a great shepherd and kings of kings. David risked his life for saving his sheep. Jesus is also a good shepherd who gave up his life for his sheep. Today, Jesus is a great shepherd. He's known as a great shepherd and he's seated in heaven. So that's quite a similarity between the two. David was also a king, and Jesus will be coming again to the world as the king. David was abandoned by people, and so was Jesus. David's friend who suffered with him in the wilderness were given high position when he became king. Similarly, those who suffer with Christ in this life will receive great rewards in the kingdom of God. So we can see there is a lot of similarities between David and Jesus. My children, I hope you understood what this chapter wants to teach you. David did not do anything. He was still, and God did the job for him. God will lift us up in the due time if we humble ourselves under his mighty hand. A man according to the heart of God may fall in sin, but he repents about it and gets victory over it by the grace of God. I hope this chapter would have taught you a lot of good things. And please share, subscribe, and like this video. Share it with your friends who are in the same class. I will see you again with a different chapter in the coming week. Thank you. May God bless you all.